The story of Ukraine's counteroffensive is one of strategy, resilience, and the shifting balance of power on a battlefield that has been the center of global attention for more than 2 years. To understand whether Russia is truly losing ground, we need to dive into both the military tactics being used and the larger political and logistical context that shapes them. At its core, Ukraine's counteroffensive is not just a collection of battles, but rather a calculated effort to reshape the trajectory of the war and alter perceptions both at home and abroad. When Ukraine launched its counteroffensive, the world had been watching months of preparation. Western nations had been providing advanced weapons systems, training for Ukrainian troops, and intelligence support to give them an edge. This included long-range artillery systems, precision-guided munitions, and armored vehicles designed to push through fortified Russian positions. The counteroffensive was framed as a test of Ukraine's ability to reclaim territory and prove that its military could go beyond defense and take the initiative. For Russia, holding ground was equally critical, not just militarily but symbolically, because any retreat would be seen as weakness by both its citizens and the international community. One of the key features of Ukraine's strategy has been its focus on stretching Russian forces thin. Instead of launching a single massive attack, Ukrainian commanders have targeted multiple points across the front lines, forcing Russia to spread its defenses and making it difficult for them to predict where the main thrust might come. This strategy, while slower than some anticipated, has had the effect of wearing down Russian logistics and exploiting weaknesses in supply chains. In modern warfare, the ability to sustain troops with ammunition, fuel, and food is often as important as the fighting itself, and Ukraine has made this a central aspect of its campaign. On the battlefield, one of the performance aspects that stands out is Ukraine's use of precision strikes against Russian command posts, ammunition depots, and supply lines. With weapons like HIMARS rocket systems, Ukraine has been able to hit high-value targets far behind the front lines, reducing Russia's ability to coordinate and resupply its forces. This kind of warfare is less about large-scale tank battles and more about carefully calculated blows that slowly erode the enemy's ability to fight effectively. The Russian military, built on Soviet-era doctrines of overwhelming firepower and heavy manpower, has struggled to adapt to this kind of asymmetric warfare, where mobility and precision often matter more than sheer numbers. Another design element of Ukraine's counteroffensive has been its reliance on Western technology and training. Modern battlefield awareness, provided by drones, satellites, and NATO intelligence, has allowed Ukraine to plan its attacks with a level of precision Russia often lacks. Drones, in particular, have played a game-changing role, providing real-time surveillance, targeting information, and even conducting strikes themselves. Small, relatively inexpensive drones have been used to target tanks, artillery, and infantry positions, leveling the playing field against Russia's larger army. The human factor is also crucial. Ukrainian troops, motivated by the defense of their homeland, have shown remarkable adaptability and resilience, learning quickly how to operate new weapons systems and integrate them into combined arms operations. Russia, by contrast, has faced issues with morale, conscription, and the challenge of maintaining cohesion among units that have suffered heavy losses. Reports from the front lines suggest that while Russia still possesses significant firepower, its troops often lack the motivation and coordination needed for effective offensive operations. A unique selling point of Ukraine's counteroffensive is that it has become as much about perception as it is about territorial gains. Each village or town recaptured carries symbolic weight, showing not just Ukrainians, but also international backers that the strategy is working. Even small advances can be magnified politically, boosting morale at home and keeping Western support intact. Russia, meanwhile, understands this dynamic and has often portrayed Ukrainian gains as insignificant, while emphasizing its ability to hold key strongholds. This battle of narratives runs parallel to the battle of weapons, and in many ways is just as critical. Logistics remain one of the biggest challenges. While Western nations have poured billions into supporting Ukraine, the scale of resources needed for a sustained offensive is enormous. Tanks require constant maintenance, artillery needs steady ammunition supplies, and soldiers need ongoing training to integrate new systems effectively. The success of Ukraine's counteroffensive is therefore not just dependent on the battlefield, but on the ability of its partners to keep the flow of weapons and financial support coming. Russia, though under heavy sanctions, has managed to find ways to keep its war machine running, drawing on stockpiles, domestic production, and support from allies like Iran and North Korea. The terrain of the battlefield also plays a defining role. Much of the fighting has taken place in areas with heavy fortifications built by Russia, including minefields, trenches, and defensive lines that are difficult to breach. Ukraine's advances in such conditions require painstaking progress, with engineers clearing mines and infantry working closely with armored vehicles. This kind of warfare is slow and grueling, often leading to frustration among observers expecting rapid breakthroughs. But for Ukraine, each step forward represents not just tactical progress, but also a demonstration that Russian defenses are not impenetrable. An important performance aspect to highlight is how Ukraine has integrated cyber warfare and information operations into its counteroffensive. By disrupting Russian communications, spreading disinformation to confuse enemy troops, and maintaining strong international messaging, Ukraine has shown that modern war extends far beyond the trenches. Russia, with its history of cyber operations, has also engaged heavily in this space. But Ukraine's ability to rally global opinion to its side gives it a unique edge in the information war. The question of whether Russia is losing ground cannot be answered solely in terms of territory. While Ukraine has made gains, especially in certain sectors, Russia still controls significant portions of Ukrainian land. However, the pressure of the counteroffensive has forced Russia to redeploy troops, strain its supply chains, and expend enormous resources just to hold on to its positions. This gradual wearing down of Russia's capacity is itself a form of success for Ukraine, even if the advances on the map appear limited. Strategically, Ukraine's counteroffensive demonstrates that Russia is no longer the unstoppable force it once seemed to be. The myth of Russian military superiority has been challenged by a smaller, more agile opponent that leverages Western technology and global support. Each successful strike against Russian infrastructure, each captured village, and each symbolic victory chips away at Moscow's ability to project confidence. At the same time, Ukraine's progress is measured against high expectations, and any perceived slowdown risks creating frustration among allies who want faster results. Another key element to consider is the future trajectory of the conflict. If Ukraine can maintain momentum and continue applying pressure, Russia may find it increasingly difficult to replenish its forces and equipment. Sanctions are biting into its economy, and while it still has reserves, the cost of sustaining this war is immense. For Ukraine, the challenge is to balance the immediate push for gains with the longer-term goal of building a military capable of withstanding a protracted conflict. This means training new recruits, integrating advanced systems like F-16 fighter jets, and preparing for the possibility that the war could drag on for years. Ultimately, Ukraine's counteroffensive is not about a single battle or breakthrough, but about shifting the balance of the war step by step. It is about showing that Russia can be resisted, that territory can be reclaimed, and that international support is justified. Whether or not Russia is truly losing ground depends on how one defines success. In terms of raw territory, the picture is mixed. But in terms of strategy, morale, and the perception of strength, Ukraine's campaign has already changed the dynamics of the war in profound ways.